Welcome to day 26 of the Gospel of John Book Club. And in today's reading, are you a son or daughter or slave?
Our reading for today is John chapter 8, verses 31 to 37. Jesus said to the people who believed in him, "You are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." "But we are descendants of Abraham," they said. "We have never been slaves to anyone." "What do you mean? You will be set free." Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth. Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. A slave is not a permanent member of the family, but a son is part of the family forever. So if the Son sets you free, you are truly free. Yes, I realize that you are descendants of Abraham, and yet some of you are trying to kill me because there's no room in your hearts for my message."
Yeah, oh man. I mean, that really pierces my heart where he says, there's no room in your heart for my message. And I just wonder, like, how many people are out there living, going to church every Sunday, just trying to, they know that there's more, they know that God is real, but in their hearts, they haven't made room for the message of Jesus. A lot of times there's competing philosophies, competing thoughts about the world, about the universe. It's so much that we take in every day. We're like in the information age. Everybody's scrolling all day on Instagram and Facebook. And I just wonder, like, how many people are out there and there's they want to know more about God. They want to get closer to him, but really in their hearts, there's just no room.
I think it's interesting that Jesus referred them to slaves, because a slave doesn't have a choice, right? So someone who is a slave to something, it's like that thing is holding them. They don't necessarily, it's like a struggle, right?
Yeah.
And so he's not necessarily, I think to use the word slave doesn't imagine in my mind that a person wants to be enslaved in some sense. But I think there's a mentality that's stuck with that when you're kind of used to something, that it's very difficult to change that. But he says, you are truly free indeed. Who the Son sets free is truly free.
Yeah.
And so, I'm just kind of wondering. He's when he's saying slavery, I don't get the thought that people want that.
Yeah, and I think what he's really communicating is that we're really born into that state.
Yeah.
Our sin nature. We are slaves to sin. We do it automatically almost. We're not trying necessarily to sin, but we are, born into sin. And, so there's nothing that we can do to really escape it except to know the truth. And I love how he just lays it out. He says to know, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And many people quote that. People say, oh, the truth sets you free. Well, the truth is already there. So the truth doesn't do any free setting. Free setting. I don't know if that's a word or not. But he says when you know the truth, right? And the truth that he's talking about is that he has come, and the truth of what God has sent Jesus into this world to do. And he's really speaking to that. And he said, so if you know that, and that your knowledge of that is what is going to allow you to be free from being trapped by sin. And I think sin is one of those things where it's like, sin keeps us weighted down. There's certain things that we kind of do on autopilot, our hearts towards people.
It is what it is. It's just there.
Yeah.
I know I have that issue.
Yeah.
I can be very judgy.
Yeah. And sometimes we try so hard to be good, but even as we try to be good, it's almost like you almost still can't help but be trapped by your sin nature.
So I think that's the beauty of Jesus, right? Because it's like you can't even help it.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I'm here to set you free. But I'm really interested in something that they were like, they are descendants of Abraham and they've never been slaves to anyone. And I'm like, I thought they were slaves to Pharaoh at one point in Egypt. So why would they say that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're just kind of looking at it in terms of they said, we're descendants of Abraham. We have never been slaves to anyone. So what do you mean we'll be set free? And I think, they try to, use scripture and God's revelation of himself to kind of just avoid where Jesus is trying to take them. Because they really are trying to avoid the fact that, that Jesus has come to, save the world, that God has sent him into the world, that he is God. And so there really is just like this battle, this struggle, this tension and them trying to really counteract, or just present counter arguments to what Jesus is saying. And
yeah, because it was very confusing to me. I think you read the whole of Old Testament.
Yeah.
It seems like the Israelites were always being oppressed by somebody or exiled or enslaved. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what do they mean? Why would they say that? But I think it's just a matter of, okay, I'm guessing they're just being argumentative.
I mean, but even beyond that, they have always been enslaved by their own by their own selves. You know, they spent many years in the wilderness, and it was on their own doing. They refused to worship God, and they kept just kind of every step of the way. Moses goes up to the mountain to meet with God, and they're back down there like trying to find other gods to worship.
But I think it goes back into that mentality of slavery, right? And I think some people say you can take someone out of a situation, but you can't always take the situation out of them.
Yeah.
Where it's like, because even as they were free, I remember as they were free and Moses had taken them out, some of them were grumbling, like, let's go back to Pharaoh. Let's go back to being slaves. And it was just this mentality of, just being enslaved mentally, or a fear, or wanting to control their situation, or just being comfortable.
Right.
And I think that's still the mindset that we tend to have. And I don't at all want to say this is the same comparison to, well, yeah, I guess it is kind of a comparison to American slavery in a sense,
wow.
because that's a tough subject for some people,
right.
especially when sometimes it seems like the Bible's condoning slavery. That's a whole nother
that's not what is being communicated.
That's not what's
here.
happening here.
Yeah.
But
so, I mean, slavery is even American slavery is a result of the human nature. People abusing, even abusing Christianity to try to justify it, and it just really, on any level that you place it on any perspective that you look at it from, at the end of the day, it just really exposes what's truly at the heart of mankind.
And I think
we're just sinful.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. I'm
Hold on, what's awesome? The slavery?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just referring it back to Jesus using this reference in this way, because he's not talking about a physical slavery. I think he's talking about a spiritual slavery. And I think in their ignorance, I don't think they still fully comprehend what Jesus is saying.
And I think to kind of maybe say it in a different way, where he kind of had communicated already. They're slaves. They're stuck in the dark. They're stuck in the darkness, and to know the truth, and you'll be set free. You'll enter into the light.
Absolutely.
The light pretty much exposes the darkness. And I think that's another way to kind of maybe pitch it, is that we get stuck in the darkness. We just kind of want to just kind of hide out there, because we're afraid of the light. Sometimes we're afraid of seeing what's really inside of our hearts, or for what's inside of our hearts to be exposed and others to be able to see it, because we feel that it's going to make us vulnerable, or we experience shame and guilt and those things. Even back in the Garden of Eden, when they did, when the first sin was committed, Adam and Eve had disobeyed God. What was the first thing that they did? They felt shame, and so they hid themselves. And so I think just for all of time, mankind has been hiding himself, and Jesus is saying, no, I have come so that you don't have to hide anymore.
Yeah. And I think this is true for not just the unbeliever, but the believer as well. Because I feel like sometimes we have salvation and we're getting into heaven, but there's still this, like I said, back to this mentality of just staying stuck in this place. We're not truly being free. Like, you're free spiritually, but now there's this mental state of continuing to be oppressed.
Yeah, free spiritually, free for eternity, but living enslaved, not being able to experience the fullness of that freedom that has been offered to us by Jesus Christ. And I love when he says, who the Son sets free is free indeed, and where he talks about a slave is not a permanent member of the family, but a son is part of the family forever. And when we accept that, Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection invites us into the family of God, then we become a part of the family forever. So we get to experience what it's like to be in the kingdom, what it's like to live in the palace. And there's freedom there. And many of us don't understand our birthright. God has adopted us as sons and daughters.
We're king's kids.
We're king's kids, and we choose to still
run our hair in here like we ain't nobody.
Wait, there you go. There you go. Tough stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.